For Republican Glenn Youngkin, 2025 is the year of the long goodbye. This is the final full year of his non-renewable 4-year term as governor. It's that point in a Virginia governor's term in which his, and next year, perhaps her, influence fades. That's because it's an election year. In November, Virginians pick a new governor and decide control of the House of Delegates. Politics is a huge distraction and will shape what happens or doesn't during this winter's legislative session. Just consider that big event last week, Richmond's water catastrophe. It forced a delay in the start of the session, and it was Monday, several days after water service was restored, before the legislature got to work and Youngkin delivered his State of the Commonwealth address. His speech, which ran almost an hour, looked back and looked forward. On Virginia's economy, Youngkin couldn't have been cheerier. Employment is growing. People are moving to the state. There have been some big industrial gets. Energy demand is accelerating, a measure of Virginia's vast digital industry. Tax revenues are booming. It's a contrast with what Youngkin said about the economy early in his term, that it was in the ditch. Never mind, at the time, Virginia was coming out of the pandemic, stronger than many states. New companies were locating here. The state treasury was overflowing with cash, in part because of federal COVID aid, which Youngkin used to pay for tax relief. There were things Youngkin didn't talk about or only mentioned in passing that have significant implications for the economy. Youngkin made no mention of President-elect Trump's promise to shrink the federal workforce, perhaps moving 100,000 employees out of the Northern Virginia area. That would, without question, be a blow to the state's economy, 30% of which is generated by federal spending. Youngkin is all in on the Trump downsizing plan. The governor has even endorsed Trump's so-called Department of Government Efficiency. It's that study of the federal budget led by, among others, Elon Musk, the wealthiest man on earth. Musk says Washington's spending could be lopped by $2 trillion. Another economic issue is immigration. Youngkin, in his own Trumpy way, has declared that he wants to kick out of the state illegal, undocumented immigrants who commit crimes. Not even Democrats would quarrel with that. Youngkin didn't mention how important talented, foreign-born people are to the Virginia economy. Indeed, one of the state's biggest employers, Amazon, which is building its East Coast headquarters in Northern Virginia, is one of the heaviest users of a federal program that allows in immigrants with technical, scientific, financial, and academic skills prized by American industry. By the way, nearly 15% of the state's population is foreign-born. That means, and there's no getting around this, immigration and economic development are closely tied. Instead, the governor talked about punishing cities and counties that, he says, refuse to cooperate with federal immigration authorities when it comes to rounding up law-breaking illegals. Youngkin wants to cut state law enforcement funding for these jurisdictions, most of which are run by Democrats. One would think this is a time, with the nation's border seemingly out of control, that those localities could actually use that money. These aren't the only topics on which Youngkin touched or didn't in his annual message. Repairing Richmond's waterworks and those serving other localities didn't come up in the Youngkin speech. Maybe he's waiting to see what a promised investigation of the Richmond crisis shows. Youngkin did propose tougher anti-drug laws. That includes a promise to again veto commercial sales of marijuana. Youngkin wants more tax cuts, more money for education, even setting aside public dollars to help low-income Virginians pay for private schools. Youngkin knows these ideas require the approval of a Democratic legislature, a legislature that hasn't hesitated to deny this governor any number of prized initiatives. But Youngkin is betting that when Democrats say no, voters will say yes. And in this year of the long goodbye, Youngkin could be rewarded with a fellow Republican as his successor, maybe even a House with a restored Republican majority. For the Richmond Times-Dispatch, this is Jeff Shapiro.